Hey guys, Table here. Today we got a look at the new patch notes update coming next week, so a lot to cover. We're going to jump right into it. I do want to say if you want to stay up to date with World of Warships Legends news, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications. We'll be covering everything as it comes down the pipe. 6-week update cycle. Normally we have 5, but I think this one, and I believe they said one more, will be a little bit longer, probably for the change of circumstance and work conditions. But the first 4 weeks, the campaign reward ship Azuma, Japanese large cruiser project designed for longer range engagements. I think that's a tier 9 on the PC, so it should be a tier 7 on ours. Looking forward to that one, as I do enjoy the Japanese cruisers quite a bit. Second mini campaign, 2 weeks. It says the main reward is a copy of Tanaka. They go on to say, well, Kurita gives you artillery options, as we'll see why they're mentioning that in a second. Many newer players haven't tried the Japanese destroyers at all. I'm calling BS on that one. Japanese destroyers seem like they're exclusively played by new players to me. But they go on to say Tanaka's a more universal commander for both. Okay. Well, why are we talking about both lines? We have an alternative Japanese destroyer branch being introduced. They said during the summer they were going to have a new line split by the end of the year. Initially, I thought it was the Japanese gunboats, which it ends up being, but due to all the British heavy cruisers that were coming out, I started to think maybe that would be the line. But Japanese gunboats it is. It says it's not going into the early access like we normally see, so this should be right on the high seas, pretty much right off the gate. We got Tier 4 Minakaze, Tier 5 Hatsuhara, Tier 6 Shiratsuyu, and the Tier 7 another ship called Akatsuki. I guess it's spelled differently, but that's going to be a little confusing, especially for people like me that have no idea how to pronounce things. Anyway, that should be quite interesting. They're also saying they're going to add a new skill that will allow you to switch playstyles somewhat on the destroyers. The Evil Spark skill improves HE penetration, but reduces alpha damage. Always an interesting option. Usually you want to focus on hitting the target first, then penetrating it, then dealing the damage. So that could be an interesting option. We'll see how that plays out. Ranked Battles, Season 8. It says, let's not forget about our Tier 4 ships. So we got a Tier 4 ranked season. It says it's going to be an extended one, which last time they did that was an absolute disaster. But we'll see how this goes. I think me and Chile are planning on teaming up again for this one, so stay tuned for that. It said they've boosted the rewards a little bit. Most notably, there's a Black Friday crate at the very end, plus several commander items, doubloons, various containers, premium account time, and even paint. You'll be able to check out the exact rewards once the season starts. New projects in the Bureau. A couple of destroyers. We got Shimakaze, Japanese destroyer. It's going to have 15 torpedoes, 3x5 launchers. Looks like 8 kilometers, 76 knots in the water, 131 second reload time. So that'll be interesting. And the the Kaba, as we call it in the business, Russian destroyer. Now this one had like a really strong reputation on the PC, from what I understand. I didn't play that version, but from what I understand, it was considered strong, and then it kind of got power crept. So maybe it's good for that ship that it's being introduced as one of the first destroyers, and it might get a little bit of a reign of effectiveness. We'll see how those go. But that should be pretty interesting there. 2 new Bureau projects. Black Friday 2020. Why do we have a biscuit game? Well, that's right, folks. You're going to be able to get the biscuit. Polish destroyer, along with the Mutsu, Indianapolis, and Atago. Now, the Mutsu, Indianapolis biscuit, you can buy straight up from the store. Atago's going to be kind of it says a low percentage chance drop in the Black Friday container. So that one should be pretty rare. There's other stuff that you can get in the containers. Shadow camos, those are the black camos. Insignias, promotion orders, premium time, doubloons, credits, global XP. It says, should you pull Atago, she'll come together with a personal mission to get a special flag. So that should be kind of cool. Biscuit does come with Jerzy Swirsky. That's the commander that has a boost to ship's concealment. So if you ever you've seen my videos where we talk about double concealment builds. He's an essential part of that. So a lot of people have been itching for the biscuit, and now's your chance. Up next, the main event, in my opinion, probably a lot of people's opinion, secondary armament improvements. You've been asking us to improve the capabilities of secondary guns ever since we introduced the German battleships. We're finally making that happen. There are several improvements within this update, and they include a new consumable, new skill, and a few improvements to existing skills. Keep in mind that in order to inflict reasonable damage by relying on your secondaries, you'll need to heavily invest in both your ship and commander build, as well as get close enough to the enemy. However, the new consumable, Enhanced Secondary Targeting, will allow many battleships to make destroyers' lives significantly harder should they wander too close. Now let's move on to the measures. Every battleship in the game receives 2 charges for the Enhanced Secondary Targeting consumable. Depending on the exact ship, this consumable either replaces something, like planes for most of them, or is added to their arsenal in some cases, like the Vanguard. Works like this. Your secondary armament becomes significantly more precise for 30 seconds, and it has a 180-second cooldown. Number 2, every brawling battleship commander receives the Properly Meticulous skill. It reduces the reload time of your secondaries by 5% to 15% and prolongs the duration of the Enhanced Secondary Targeting consumable that we just talked about by 10% to 35%. Porcupine skill, which brawling battleship commanders already possess, has received some small improvements. Shell grouping now improves from 3 to 12% up to, that was the original values, I believe. That's going to 5 to 15%. While the maximum dispersion radius further narrows from 5 to 15 previously to 7 to 18%. So tightening up the porcupine skill. And the elbow room base trait of Franz von Hipper, used as the main inspiration for secondary builds, I believe that's the one that extends the range, has received additional improvements. The shell grouping of secondary armament improves by 0.25% per rank, up to 5%. So massive improvement to the secondaries. Dust off your Bismarcks if you sold them. Get your credits out because you're going to want them back. Major changes. It says we've only gathered limited use case data from the super testers, so it's important that you provide feedback should you decide to go the secondary route. So a lot of people should be excited about that. Additional balance changes. We got the Grober Kurfurst secondary battle range has been increased from 5 to 7. That's pretty good since they were largely useless as currently configured. Alaska's survivability looked like it needed to be bolstered a little, so she received a small boost for her repair party. 20% of the Citadel HP will now be restored instead of the standard 10, while the number of charges for this consumable has been increased from 2 to 3. Damage count has also had its cooldown reduced from 60 to 55, so significant improvements to the Alaska's survivability as well. Next gen release, the Xbox Series X/S version of the game, which will be released before this update cycle's over, won't support voice communication with other platforms other than the other new gen Xbox Series X or S for some time. Crossplay will be supported right away as it is currently, and announcements about Legends on PS5 will follow soon. So, and that's information for those of you that are planning on upgrading the console right out of the gate. Miscellaneous changes. This one's interesting. A weekly mission chain has been added for legendary ships. It'll allow you to earn 5 promotion orders. That'll be really nice. Increase the population of the legendary tier and given more promotion orders, which are desperately needed the world over. We got a new port. Looks like Nagasaki. We'll put the patch notes in the link, or we'll put a link to the patch notes in the description. I'm going to release this before I get up, so if you watch it right out of the gate, I'll update it in a few hours with the patch notes link. But stay tuned for that. But I went over pretty much everything that's interesting, at least in my opinion. So, of course, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on the update. I'll give you a little rundown of mine. I think this is a pretty juicy update. Me and Chili were actually talking the other day once we got an early look at the patch notes, and we thought this was pretty exciting. I think this is kind of the update we've been looking for. Secondary rework the players, myself included, have been saying that's been needed pretty much since launch. As they said, you know, it took me about 3 games in the Bismarck before I started publicly stating that I don't think people should be speccing for secondary builds on that. Those days should be over. These secondary changes look quite juicy, so that's going to really shake up the meta a little bit. It's a little unfortunate that they didn't come out with this a little bit earlier, but whatever. We'll take what we can get. They also did note, I forgot to mention, they said the secondaries on the Japanese gunboat destroyers will be quite effective, and then they alluded to, what does it say? They also have better anti-aircraft weaponry, which may become quite useful in the coming months. So stay tuned. They're dropping a little bit of a hint. I think that aircraft carrier test should be coming. Nothing officially stated, but if you can read between the lines, which isn't too difficult in this case, you know, you can kind of see what's coming there. So overall, should be quite a solid update. The Biscuit, I do want to give my breakdown, because a lot of people have been looking for Swirsky. They want the double concealment build. If you're buying it just for the Commander, fine, that's your right. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I do like the Biscuit quite a bit. I think it's a good ship, as we've seen in this game here. But in terms of secondary build, the double concealment builds, I only run that on maybe 1 or 2 lines at this point in time. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. It will allow you to run full concealment builds. Good option to have, but that's my thoughts. I wouldn't necessarily strongly recommend it just based on Swirsky's not quite as valuable as he was out of the gate. Anyway, that's a look at that one, guys. Hope you did enjoy it. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. New to the channel, consider subscribing. Lots of World of Warships coming all the time. Questions, comments, leave them below. We'll see y'all around.